And now it's time for the Triathlete Routard, that segment of the show in which I give a travel guide of sorts to a race on the WTC 70.3 and Ironman calendars. And for this specific episode, I have a special treat in store. If you go to my YouTube channel, the TriDoc Coaching channel on YouTube, if you enter TRIDOC without a space into the search bar, you'll be able to find my channel where you will find a video of this episode. And that's particularly special because I've taken quite a bit of footage from a race that I just did with my friend Mike Jackson, who's joining me for this episode. Mike is a triathlete for the past 3 years, and one of his highlights from his brief career is that he finished on the podium at Santa Rosa last September. And Santa Cruz, that's the second time I said Santa Rosa. Santa Cruz last year, and qualified for the World Championships in Nice. And he's joining me because we both just participated in the Ironman 70.3 Victoria, which is the subject of the Triathlete Routard for this episode. So please do check out the YouTube channel where you could see video of this. And for now, please do listen in because this is a really good episode on an excellent race. So let's begin, as we always do, with a discussion as to whether or not you need to sign up early for this race. Is this one that fills up quickly, or can you wait till the very end?
So I actually put off signing up for this race. I knew it was on my calendar since probably December, and I just put it off and put it off. Ended up signing up maybe a month and a half ago, just because I wanted to see how I was feeling for St. George when I did it at the beginning of last month. I had no problem signing up. I even think that they were taking registrations as late as yesterday, possibly this morning, here, which you have to pay an extra fee for. But yeah, so getting into the race isn't difficult.
That is unusual, and I know from looking at the website that it was not full. They were taking registration as recently as, a couple of days ago. Taking registration on site is really interesting. So yeah, this is one you could sign up late. It was a pretty small race as far as these kinds of races go. There was 1,700 participants. Transition, I don't think, could have handled too many more.
No, it seemed like it was pretty packed.
Pretty
tight.
Busy, yeah.
But that's also nice because there isn't a lot of extra room.
Right.
Right.
So yeah. Okay, so let's talk about travel and gear transport considerations. TriBike Transport does service this race and was an excellent choice. Both of us utilized them. They are located directly next to Transition, which was really fantastic for picking up the bikes for the race, and then especially for dropping them off immediately afterwards. Yep. How about travel? Getting to Victoria can be a little bit onerous. It's not the most straightforward. How did you manage it both last year and this year?
So last year, I flew into Vancouver, which was pretty easy. I live in LA, so it was a direct flight into Vancouver. And then stayed there a night, took the ferry over, actually rented a car in Vancouver, and then drove over on the ferry, which was a treat. I really like the Pacific Northwest, and being able to see the Canadian part of that was an absolute joy. This year, I decided to actually fly directly into Victoria, just because of time constraints, and I wanted to make sure that I was maximizing my time actually flying out. So I ended up flying through Seattle. Had a fairly lengthy layover there, and then I think it's a 30-minute flight from Seattle into Vancouver, so faster than
Victoria.
Or into Victoria,
yeah.
thank you. So faster than your swim is probably going to be. And that just worked out great.
Yeah.
It was easy to get a car. The airport is very small.
Yeah.
I think they have 10
gates, yeah.
and that's it. It's never really busy.
Yeah.
So.
The big thing I found was really just finding flights in terms of, when I wanted to get here for the race.
Yep.
It wasn't the easiest thing. And then also it became prohibitively expensive to fly in the days I wanted to. Mm-hmm. So an option is to fly into Vancouver and then take the ferry. The ferry's incredibly cheap. I paid like $17.50 Canadian to walk on. And I have some footage, time lapse that I took. I mean, it's if you get the right day, and I did. I mean, the seas were calm. It was a beautiful sunny day with blue sky. I mean, it's a spectacular ride. And just incredibly beautiful, as you said, going through the islands. And I mean, it is the Pacific Northwest after all.
Yeah,
So, I
yeah,
mean, just really beautiful.
Yeah, once you get off the open ocean and into the channel, you're cutting through islands, and it's almost always calm there. So you can go out on deck and you can see all the little islands, all the people that have houses there. Everybody is waving at the ferry as it goes by, and
it's amazing. If you have a car, if you go by foot, you just walk on and you just buy a ticket. If you're going by car, it's advised to reserve, but it's not like you need to reserve ages in advance. You can usually reserve a week or
I think we might have reserved it 2 or 3 weeks ahead of time.
Yeah,
and there's not a problem. There's a bunch of ferries that go every day, so. And from different locations as well.
Right.
So you just have to find what's available.
Right. So let's talk about where to stay. You could tell us where you stayed last year and then again this year.
So last year we stayed at a Best Western up here in Sydney, which is where we stayed up in Sydney this year as well. A lot of people stay down in Victoria. There's a lot of hotels and stuff down there. But I've found that getting to and from the race location is much easier if you stay to the north because there's so much traffic coming from the south.
Yeah, and the race hotel is the Grand Pacific, which is in Victoria proper. There's a lot more lodging options in Victoria, but truthfully, I'm really happy we stayed north. Yeah. It was just so much easier. The race is located about a 10-minute, 15-minute drive from Victoria, and it was about the same from where we are in Sydney, which is a little bit north. One important thing to know about this race is there's really no parking whatsoever at the race site itself. You have to park about 5 or 6 kilometers south, and they have shuttles. That's both before the race for packet pickup and all that stuff, but also the day of. It adds, it's obviously a little bit onerous. We didn't do that, though, because Mike had some knowledge that helped us out.
Yeah, so there's a gentleman that lives right by the lake, the race venue, who every year sells spots on his property. He's got a big piece of property and sells about 90 spots basically for the whole weekend. So you can go and you can park there. It's pretty inexpensive. I know there are other people as well in the area that are doing
some
similar
local
things.
businesses too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's highly recommended because you don't have to deal with shuttling and dropping off your bike and picking up your bike, and even though they provide an area to basically stage your equipment to get it into a car quick, that tends to get backed up pretty quickly because everybody's leaving around the same time.
Yeah, and the access was really poor, so it was just a traffic jam the whole time. So if you can get one of those parking spots in one of the residents or one of the businesses, it's well worth it. And you can look online. You should be able to find information about that. If you sign up for the race, do that early because those places are known and they sell out pretty quickly. Yep. All right, let's talk about the course. It's a spectacular course and incredibly difficult. One of the more difficult races that I have done on the 70.3 calendar. So let's start with the swim. Swim's in an amazing lake, really, really clean.
Yeah, it's one of the few open water swims that's been in a lake that I've done that doesn't have any sort of like sedimentary taste or taste from recreational boats or things like that. Yeah. It's very clean water. It's very clear water. And the lake isn't big enough to really generate any big waves or anything. So even if there is some wind, which there rarely is in the morning, it's trivial.
And you could see, if you're watching on the video, you could see some drone footage of what the lake looks like and how clean and clear it is, but also just a very basic rectangular course. It's pretty straightforward. Out, make a turn. It must have been about 150 meters, and then make a turn to come back, and you finish about 150 meters from where you start.
Yeah, you basically swim all the way across the lake, turn, and then come back.
Yeah, and it's a rolling start, self-seated rolling start. They start started us 3-4 abreast, and they were
Yeah, I think
starting
it's
3 or 4
4.
every 5 seconds or so. It was really efficient and went very well, I thought. The sighting was fairly straightforward.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're not swimming into the sun at any point,
Right.
but the buoys are on your right, and on the way back, to sight off the buoys, you're looking into the sun just a little bit. I found that personally a little bit difficult. My goggles had fogged by that point a little bit, and I was having some difficulties, but I mean, really minor. I was able to just follow the swimmers ahead of me. I'm not at the front after all. The water temperature.
Water temperature was balmy. It was 71 degrees this year, which was surprising because it hasn't even been that warm here. But because it's such a shallow lake,
Warms up quickly.
It warms up very quickly.
Yeah, and I mean,
but still wetsuit legal.
Wetsuit legal, and I was toasty towards the end, but still worth it because of the benefits of the full sleeve wetsuit. I mean, I'm happy I wore a full sleeve.
Yeah, it wasn't hot enough that I felt significant discomfort.
Right.
I definitely, as I was pushing harder coming in the last 500 yards, I could definitely tell that it was warmer than I would necessarily like, but nothing that would cause a problem.
Right. And coming out of the water, it's nothing too exciting. There's no major, it's not a rocky beach at all. It's like a little bit of strip of sand, and then you're running on grass. A couple of minor things to know about transition. There's no wetsuit strippers, which is a little bit unusual for a large 70.3 race. And then, but certainly not a big deal. And then the other thing is you cannot keep your shoes in the pedals of your bike. That apparently is a rule that is across Canadian triathlons. Don't quite understand it, but it is what it is. It's the same for everybody, so not a big deal.
Yeah, and they have bike marshals on Saturday that are actually going around looking for it, and will either put a note on your bike if you have them clipped in and you've left, or will tell you if you were standing there with your equipment. So they won't actually touch your bike,
but they'll
make sure that you know.
Okay, let's talk about the bike course. It is special. It's really difficult. One of the more challenging but incredibly scenic bike courses on the circuit.
Yeah, one thing to know is that there is over 3,000 feet of climbing on the bike.
Yep.
But there really aren't any major hills. So that's really spread out on the first third of the bike and the last third of the bike.
Yeah.
There's a lot of rollers, and there's a lot of rollers that have steep grade to them. So they don't look like they're big, but they take a lot of effort to get up, and they zap your speed.
And they zap your legs if you're not careful.
Yeah.
This is a course that you've really got to manage well. If you overcook the first third, or if you overcook the bike course in general, you're done, because this bike course is legit. Again, like Mike said, 3,000 feet of elevation, but I mean, one hill at about mile 40 that's like substantial, and the rest of it is just these little punchy. It's like, I compare it to like one of the spring classics in Belgium. I mean, you're just constantly going up or down. It's a relentless course, and if you don't manage it, you're done. And both of us saw lots of people like pushing way too hard on some of these hills, and we knew they were going to pay the price. And, we either passed them when it was flat, or else we passed them on the run hurting.
Yeah, and the first third has a significant number of turns in it. It's very well manned. They have flaggers at every corner, not only to make sure you know where you're going, but also to keep cars and stuff away from the cyclists. Everywhere I went, there was cars stopped if there were any cars. Because it starts so early, there aren't a lot of people out at the beginning of the race, which is very nice.
Yeah, and I mean, really well. I mean, I was very impressed with how well marshaled it was in terms of the corners.
Yep.
But that being said, this is a technical course. Lot of turns, and a lot of them are 90-degree turns. And the road surfaces, for the most part, good. But I got to say, there was a lot of those turns that were either at the bottom of hills or were a little bit sketchy. I mean, I didn't feel terribly comfortable. And, I mean, we have a mutual friend who, had trouble.
Yeah, we have a friend that crashed last year, which was mostly the fault of a driver. So you really do have to be cognizant of what traffic is doing around you, even though there are the flaggers there.
Yeah, drivers are drivers, right? And
Yeah, and communication between
yeah.
somebody standing on the road and somebody in a car that can't really talk to them or hear them
Yeah.
isn't always perfect.
And drivers
So,
get impatient and do what they're going to do.
Exactly.
Fortunately, she's come back better than
way better.
ever.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
but that's not to say it was good for you. Anyway, so the bike is tough. I did not personally. That's one other thing I want to say about the bike. The bike is, if you're at the front, and both of us kind of got to the front fairly early, which was great because there's a lot of descents on this bike course that are winding and in wooded areas that you don't necessarily see a long way down the road, and not everybody rides terribly well. So if you're a middle of the packer or back of the packer, you got to keep your head on a swivel because it can be potentially dangerous. I spoke with a friend of mine who was sort of a middle of the pack guy, and he said he definitely felt pretty nervous, not because of his skills, but because of the skills or lack thereof of the people around him.
Yeah.
So you definitely got to watch out for that. That being said, the bike course is spectacular.
Yeah, and as I said, it's sort of broken up into thirds. The middle third is very flat, and it's a good opportunity to sort of put some power down, get some speed.
Yep.
As you're going from the south part of the peninsula to the north part. You have gorgeous ocean views in that section, and if it's a windy day, that can be a problem. But today it was perfect. It was wide open, and that's really where you can pick up some time that you've lost from all the hills and turns and stuff on the rest of the course.
Yeah, and I saw a fair number of officials out there looking for drafters, but what I didn't see was a lot of drafting. But again, I was up front. I didn't see a ton of people, and I don't know that there was a lot of opportunities. So, at least for what it's worth, where I was, I did not see a lot of drafting, which was nice.
Yeah, me neither.
Okay, so it is a loop bike course. Your transition 2 is the same as transition 1, and nothing too exciting about that. And you go out on the run and the run course, and again, I have some video of this, but the run course is one of the most beautiful I've done, but that beauty belies its beast-like quality. It was very difficult.
Yeah, most of the run is part of a trail system that goes around the lake. And you basically hug the edge of the lake. It's through the woods. Part of it is gravel and fairly wide and well used, which is probably the easier section of the run. Part of it is real trail with roots and twists and turns and hills, and albeit probably not big hills, it does take a lot of more technical effort to be able to navigate. And then there's a fairly long section, I would say 1.5 miles maybe, that's on a paved road, but it's a false flat, and so you're running uphill, and that can take a toll as well.
Yeah. So a couple of things I'll say about the course, besides its beauty and the fact that it's almost entirely shaded, which is really, really, unique amongst courses I've done. It is a trail, like you said. There's a lot of twisty turns at the beginning of it. There's a lot of exposed roots and a little bit of uneven surface. I took a digger towards the end. I was tired. I misstepped and just misjudged one of these exposed roots, and it's my own fault. But it hurt, and I did see a couple other people fall late in the race too.
Yeah,
so
that's the thing. If you're pushing it on the race, and you come around that second loop, you know what the course is like. But that doesn't mean that you'll have the energy to run it like the first lap.
That's right. And that's the second thing I wanted to say is that because you're in the woods, your GPS doesn't tend to work. And, I was counting on that for my pacing, planning on pacing my race a certain way, and then all of a sudden my GPS isn't working. I'm not getting my pace numbers, and therefore didn't race the way I wanted to. And as a result, I think I overcooked that first lap and then, ran out of gas around mile 10, and that led to me falling, etc. But that's just something to be aware of. If you're going to run by perceived effort, you better know what your pace feels like for certain perceived effort. The other thing is you can use a foot pod. I didn't have my foot pod today. And just to know that the GPS is going to be unreliable in the wooded sections. But, it's a really tough course. It's really challenging, but there are people who manage to run pretty fast times here today.
Yeah,
so.
I mean, I saw times on the men's side in like the 115 range,
Yeah.
and the women's side they were 120. So
Yeah.
there's definitely very fast times,
Yeah.
even on the age groupers.
Yeah.
So
And that's another thing. This field was really
phenomenal.
good. Yeah, this was a really fast field. So there were some very fast times being put down.
Yeah, the one thing I would say about the run is if you're a road racer and you're not a trail runner, do go run some trails.
Get used to that.
Get used to lifting your feet a little bit more. Get used to the change in direction and things like that, because that will pay off dividends when you get on that run.
So let's just finish up by talking about weather. This year was perfect.
Phenomenal.
Yeah.
Last year, same thing. It was a beautiful bluebird day.
Yeah.
Not too hot, partly because a lot of the course is shaded. There have been races in the past where it's been very windy. The weather does tend to change fairly quickly. I think the forecast 10 days out called for rain today, and then it changed to be in the upper 50s, and I think the high today was 70-something in the afternoon.
Yeah.
But of course, because you start racing an hour earlier than most 70.3s, you're more likely to miss that hotter weather.
Yeah, and I mean that was a real benefit. I mean, we were both off the bike around 9:30. Done with the run by around 11:15, 11:30. So I mean, it was a real boon to get the race done before the warmer weather came around. But again, it was shaded, so I don't even know that it would have mattered.
Since we're so far north, I think first light today was 4:30 a.m.
Oh, it was crazy.
So as we were driving to the race, the sky was already getting light, and it wasn't a problem at all as far as setting up transition or anything like that.
Any final thoughts about this race?
This is definitely one of my favorite races. It is one of two races that I've done, both this year, that I've actually done the same course over again. St. George was the other one. And it's just the location, you can't beat it. And the people that are volunteering are very nice. I love Sydney. It's a very cute town. Victoria's got lots of stuff to offer as well. And if you want to stay longer, there's plenty of things to do and see on the island or even in Vancouver that it makes for a great vacation as well.
Yeah, I totally agree. This was a terrific race, terrific venue, really great community support, and I would definitely highly recommend it and encourage anybody who's thinking about it to consider coming out here. It's a fantastic race on the calendar and very challenging, but definitely worth doing. Mike Jackson is a triathlete who is going to be at the World Championships in Nice this year, and I thank him so much for joining me on the Triathlete Routard today.
Thanks for having me.